Good afternoon and welcome back to the EIT Health Catapult Medtech semi-finals. We hope you had a great lunch and are ready to discover our next 7 pitch and startups. We will be, of course, reaching the climax of the day with 5 o'clock Central European time with that magic moment of awards, which will be preceded by our third and final expert insight. But before that, we're going to go back to meeting our next 7 exciting pitches. And to start off, we are going to go to Spain. The rules are exactly the same. 5 minutes for pitching, 5 minutes for Q&A. If there is an overrun, of course, unfortunately, it will be necessary to cut. And the jury will be making their decision, making those marks and notes directly after each pitch has been given. So with that, on that note, let's go now back to Spain today. And we are going to be meeting the co-founder of a startup called Luco. And we are going to be listening to Aurélien Bourcard. So Aurélien, the co-founder of Luco. Hello, good to see you.
Hello. Likewise.
Great. And now it's 5 minutes to pitch. The floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon. So today I will present you PointCheck, which is the first device that can monitor white cells non-invasively. In today's clinical practice, a blood draw is needed whenever we measure white cells. This is very burdensome for the patients because they need to go to the hospital. This limits the frequency of monitoring. Next slide. Next slide. Here is why the clinical routine needs to be changed. In chemotherapy, the lack of white blood cells is a common side effect. This is a huge issue because this often causes infections which are life-threatening. This also creates a horrible uncertainty to patients and their family. Next. In Europe and US alone, this creates a huge economic burden of more than 5 billion due to hospitalizations and also 25,000 deaths every year. Next. Today, measurements take place only at 2 time points, and that's what's in between nobody knows. So, doctors and patients are in the dark most of the time of the chemo, and patients will get low white cells and catch infections due to lack of monitoring. But we can improve the situation. Next. Our product, PointCheck, allows white cells to be monitored daily and detect when they drop before infections occur. It will show you when the patient is safe or at risk, alerting the medical team in time to intervene. This will reduce hospitalizations by 50%. This also moves the point of care setup into the patient's hands, improving the patient's health and the quality of life, like we saw for glucose monitoring. Next. And this is why more than 100 KOLs are supporting us. These KOLs validated our value proposition and are willing to adopt our technology. Next. Besides the support of our KOLs, we have recognition from industries, associations, and innovation hubs on both sides of the Atlantic. So, how does our product work? Next. The breakthrough of PointCheck is to use optical imaging instead of blood draws to monitor white cells. Frequent monitoring works because patients can use PointCheck from home without any supervision. Once the finger is inserted into the device, the patient is guided by an interface. The result is then produced in 1 minute as sent to the medical team, telling if the patient is safe or at risk. The device and the related methods are protected by several patents. So, how do we do it? Next. PointCheck uses imaging and looks at capillaries through the skin in the near fold area, highlighted here, using an optical microscope. Next. In the images acquired by the microscope camera, we see that this area contains capillaries that are easy to see. What PointCheck does is to record, track, and count all white cells that flow through these capillaries in a 1-minute video. As you can see below, a white cell produces a transparent gap in the capillary. This method is a quick, secure, and effective way to count white cells. Next. And it's not just a concept. Our technology has been clinically tested, proven to be highly accurate in many patients, and published in highly ranked journals. Results demonstrate compliant diagnostic performance to detect severe neutropenia with a high sensitivity and specificity. Next. In terms of market size, we have a sizable market of around 3 billion euros with more than 2 million patients in Europe and in the US. Next. Our B2b value proposition is based on the 50% savings that we generate by avoiding hospital readmissions. Our business model targets financially at-risk healthcare providers and insurers, and PointCheck follows a subscription model. Costs are in line with our devices like glucometers. Next. We have set ambitious but achievable milestones. We have shown the feasibility in stage 1. In stage 2, we are now finalizing industrialization in view of regulatory clearance. The next step, stage 3, is regulatory approval and commercial launch, for which we'll raise our 6 million Series A. So, who is making that reality possible? Next. We are a committed team of co-founders and seasoned entrepreneurs with a multidisciplinary background. Next. We also have a strong board of directors and advisors with a solid experience in oncology, medical devices, and various business and regulatory aspects. Next. We are local. PointCheck uses an entirely new non-invasive technology, and it could save 25,000 lives per year. This is our first product. In the longer term, our vision is to do full non-invasive blood testing by further expanding its technological capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Aurélien. Thank you very much for the exciting Luco pitch. Let's now turn to the jury and listen to their questions. Let's go, Daniel, straight away.
Hi, thanks for the excellent pitch. I wonder if what examples you have that can be relevant to this, to this invention. Can you detect effectiveness and specificity of immunotherapy for cancer?
I will let Alvaro, my co-founder, answer this question.
Yeah, hello. I hope that the audio is okay. I'm a local medical officer, and our use case is more like related to neutropenia with regular chemotherapies, not immunotherapies. So we are targeting mainly like chemotherapies that are producing like low white cells, as Aurélien mentioned. Obviously, we have a portfolio and roadmap of other opportunities, but specifically immunotherapies is not an area that we are like investigating.
Let me clarify. So you're detecting if it goes lower on white cells, but you're not targeting, you're not focused on checking whether they go higher on the number of white cells, right?
That will be like a future application, for example, for sepsis management and infection management. So that's in our roadmap. But for the current product, we are focusing on neutropenia as the first market. But as you said, there are like other applications, and that's one of the many that we envision.
Nana, Simon, Claudio, I think you have a question. Let's go. Nana.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Simon, I think you were first. But
whatever.
Very brief question. I'm really fascinated point of care solution, and I see the lots of application in the food and development. My question is, in the case situation, for example, the low blood pressure in capillaries, how is sensitive your approach, your technology?
Oh, okay. You mean
specificity and sensitivity, because you mentioned high numbers, but you didn't mention the numbers. So you just mentioned that you mentioned publications and so on and so on. How is specific and sensitive in different cases? We know the patient with cancer or other conditions, hematological disorders, they potentially have the approach. The diseases also affects the cardiovascular system, hemodynamics, the blood pressure. It could be low blood pressure. How is sensitive? How is it accurate?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So excellent question. So what we have shown in our clinical from our clinical studies is that we are above 80% of specificity and above 92% of sensitivity. So regardless of the specific blood pressure. So all these factors, may vary during the studies, but basically we achieve that performance.
Yeah. Let me add also that we will include in our label some obviously like warnings. So for example, people with Raynaud's disease or like other conditions that might affect capillaries. As you said, there might be conditions also that we will have to include in our label, and we have discussed this with regulatory agencies, because obviously the technology might have like some interference with some of these areas, but that will be in our label.
Yeah, and then you include those kind of patients group in design of your clinical trial protocols.
Yeah, absolutely. We have like, I mean, obviously there are like exclusion criteria based on like conditions that might affect like capillaries. So for example, rheumatological diseases like Raynaud's.
Yeah.
And also like people with low blood pressure, there is like an exclusion criteria, specific one. But we also have like a diverse population that we are including to ensure that the technology will be generalizable. So people with different like age groups, ethnic backgrounds. So that's considered in the study. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very
Super.
quickly, could you maybe give us 2 words on how many patients you might push towards clinical care unnecessarily? And again, I'm thinking about the false positive rates that you might provide.
So the amount of patients, I mean, that we would...
The ones that you basically got sensitivity and specificity figures. Out of those, what number of patients will you misdiagnose as having neutropenia, therefore seek medical attention?
20%. So
Yes.
the rate of false positive will be like 20%. We are favoring like a sensitivity for obvious reason, because neutropenia is a life-threatening condition. So we want to be erring on that side of the. So we think that our
and what kind of cost? Sorry, just in 10 seconds. And what kind of cost will that therefore incur to the healthcare system?
Yeah, that right now the indication for use includes like the team contacting the patients that are flagged as at risk. So they will do like a second verification in terms of temperature and other symptoms to avoid like problems.
Got it.
Thank you very much. That wraps up very nicely this Q&A session with with Luco. Excuse me. So we are going now to meet a new startup in Finland. We are going to meet LS Cancer Diag. And to pitch LS Cancer, we have the CFO, Niklas Lahti. Niklas, good afternoon. Very nice to meet you. And you now have 5 minutes to pitch. The floor is yours. Have a great time.
Thank you. Almost all of us know someone who has had cancer, and no wonder, just last year there was 19 million new cancer cases worldwide. But did you know that 10% of all cancers are because of hereditary reasons, meaning that no matter how healthy these people live, they are having a significant risk in developing cancer at some point of their life. My name is Niklas Lahti, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of LS Cancer Diag, a company that has developed a breakthrough technology to detect Lint syndrome and prevent cancer. So you may ask, what is Lint syndrome? Well, let me tell you, it's actually the most common reason for the predisposition of cancer, meaning that it has a prevalence of up to 1 in 125 people worldwide. It's also dominantly inherited, so first-degree family members have a 50% risk of having the same condition as the one diagnosed with Lint syndrome. And finally, these people have up to 80% risk of developing cancer during their lifetime. If we compare these numbers to the general population, we can easily see that the risk of getting cancer is significant, especially in the colorectal and endometrial, as well as the reoccurrence of cancers. But the problem is actually not to prevent the cancer. We already have means to prevent cancer if we would just know who the people with Lint syndrome are. The problem are that it is currently way underdiagnosed because of the inadequate diagnostic methods today. So we have developed Diag MMR, a breakthrough technology to detect Lint syndrome from healthy tissue, meaning that we don't need the tumor tissue at all. And we are actually allowing the whole families to be diagnosed with Lint syndrome, allowing an easy cascade testing. What we do is we have a functional test testing the DNA mismatch repair function, the hallmark of Lint syndrome when it's deficient. And we do not only give you the answer whether the patient has Lint syndrome or not, we are actually measuring the function quantitatively, meaning that we can actually give keys for the clinician to provide a personalized treatment plan to prevent both primary and recurring cancers. If we compare our method to the current state of art, which requires a tumor studies from investigation of family history of cancer, and finally genetic testing, trying to find the pathogenic variant behind the disease, 82% of those technologies fail to detect Lint syndrome, meaning that they are simply inconclusive. Whereas if you want to see that the dark MMR is a predictive technology, relatively non-invasive, simple, and finally superior in accuracy, as we can see in the next slide. So what have we done so far, and what are our next steps to be a commercial success? The company was founded in 2013, after which we developed Diac MMR and run a clinical validation with excellent results of 100% specificity and 89% of sensitivity. After that, we have a CE mark for the product, and we actually commercialized Diac MMR already in our home country in Finland. And we have granted 29 patents, including all the target markets in EU, US, and China. Our next step is to collect 5 million euros to develop an in vitro diagnostic kit of the technology, as well as finalize our health economic studies for reimbursement and regulatory purposes. This is to get the approval from the FDA, as well as comply with the CE IVDR. The market for Diac MMR is huge, and this is mainly because of the current guidelines, which already suggest to screen all colorectal and endometrial cancers for Lint syndrome. The implementation is only starting, giving us a perfect timing for the commercialization, and the awareness of Lint syndrome is increasing thanks to all the patient organizations worldwide. And also, the more genetic testing is done, the bigger is the need for a functional testing, just like MMR, to verify their results, as well as provide clinicians the keys for this personalized care. We are a dynamic team of 8 people and led by our founder, Professor Minna Nyström, who has over 30 years of experience of research in the Lint syndrome, being one of the leading researchers in the whole world. And I'm having a background in corporate finance. Minto is the chief scientific officer, and Philip takes care of the business development part. If you share our values and want to join us today, I would love to have a chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Niklas. Thank you very much indeed. Well done. Great pitch. Let's turn to the jury and see what questions they are going to ask you. Who would like to kick off? Yes, Aidan and then Claudio. Go ahead.
I'm interested in the percent chance of developing cancer when you have this this gene, you know, and what time frame are you talking about? Is it over your lifetime or?
Oh yeah, so yeah, it's a hereditary disease, meaning that you have the risk of developing cancer during the whole life. The average age of getting cancer is 45, so relatively to 20 years.
And what is that risk for each cancer? What is that risk for each cancer?
Yeah, for colorectal cancer, it's the risk is 80%. And for the endometrial cancer, it's pretty much the same. It depends on a bit about of the gene. So there are four different genes involved, and then there are like 12 different cancers in total, but those are the main 2 ones.
Okay, thank you.
Claudio, over to you.
Very interesting. So, but something that you haven't touched upon is competition. So I was wondering, I mean, this looks like so huge an opportunity. Why not others? So what you have that makes you different, unique?
Yeah, it's. I mean, the good news is that in the commercial phase, we have no competition except that the current way of detecting Lint syndrome. So typically, you run the normal tumor studies like immunohistochemistry and microsatellite instability. And if you find any indication for Lint syndrome, then you run a genetic testing and try to find the mutation behind the disease. As an indirect competition is, of course, all the genetic testing that are done regularly all over the world. But we see them more like partners because they have a lot of problems in really giving a verified diagnosis for Lint syndrome, and we can provide them information that they actually need. And on top of that, we have really quantified the function. So we do not only tell if you have Lint syndrome, what we can really measure in future, what are the risks. So, for example, at what stage should you start your colonoscopy to prevent colorectal cancer?
Neil, I jump in. You can ask your question, please.
Yes, just very quickly. So the results of this test would probably drive diagnostic choices rather than treatment choices, or what's the outcome for patients with a certain result?
Sorry, I couldn't hear your question very well. I had a very small lag.
If a patient is seen to have very poor function, is that mostly driving monitoring of that patient, or can you make treatment decisions?
Right.
Very good question. It's mainly for monitoring, for sure, because it's still about preventing, but it has also implications on the treatment of the cancer. So first of all, we know that the patients are typically MSI high. That can of course be found from the microsatellite instability testing as well. But different mutations, for example, may affect differently on the treatment as well. But yes, the monitoring is for sure the main reason for this.
Okay, Nana, has your question been covered, or would you like to ask one?
No, not yet. Thank you. I also see that as a great opportunity. As you developed a new biomarkers in terms of the tracking the disease. My question, first of all, maybe I missed it. Your business model first, and a second, I'd love to see the correlation between genetic markers and identification of mutation and your prediction. So because this is actually will address the whole monitoring, tracking, and diagnostic tools. Plus, I love also that you included the AI modeling and then developing the risk. So business modeling and the correlation between genetics and the imaging procedures. Thank you.
Absolutely great question. Thank you. In 5 minutes, you just don't have time to tell everything, but we are currently having a laboratory developed test. So the clinicians are sending samples into our own lab, and we run the testing in our lab, and then we provide the result. However, we are going to provide an in vitro diagnostic kit. So we want to, when we discuss with the key opinion leaders in Europe and in the US, they want to run the test in their own facilities, especially in Europe. So that is going to change for sure. That is where we are actually collecting money.
Good luck. Super great. Thank you.
All right. Well, look, I'm so sorry, Simon. Your question will have to come later, perhaps, because we've run out of time. We have to play the game. Thank you so much, jury, for developing a very, very rich Q&A there. And thank you, Niklas. Let's now go to Ireland. We are going to meet Dr. Barbara Oliveira, co-founder of the startup Luminate Medical. Hello, Barbara. Great to meet you this afternoon. Lovely. And you now have 5 minutes to pitch. Have a great time.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Barbara Oliveira. I'm co-founder of Luminate Medical, and we are ending hair loss for chemotherapy patients. The whole world, The whole world knows that sudden hair loss means cancer, but millions of cancer patients wish that it didn't. We've heard this from so many patients we've spoken to. But there's one story that really sticks with us, and it's from a young mother with breast cancer who told us that she wanted to keep her hair, not for her, but so that her kids thought that she was okay. So hair loss really is a massive need, and it's why we've been laser focused on developing Lily, our pain-free, portable, and patient-centric solution to help patients retain their hair and improve their psychosocial outcomes when going through cancer treatment. So the Lily device is worn by patients during and after chemo, and it uses our localized microvascular compression therapy. Essentially, our therapy, which is now patented, works by applying a light compression on the scalp to reduce the amount of blood flow and therefore chemo that gets to the hair follicles, ultimately helping patients retain their hair. And we actually have already proved that our therapy works. Number one, with our 106 animal study. And as you can see, the only place where animals retained hair corresponds to the green areas where we applied our therapy. Number two, we also ran a healthy volunteer study where we obtained a far greater and much more reliable reduction in blood flow compared to the predicates. But let me switch gears a little and let me tell you that 3 million cancer patients every year in the US and Europe alone receive chemotherapy treatments that cause hair loss. This creates a 3.9 billion euro opportunity. But what's even more astonishing is that 84% of these cancer patients are already spending vast amount of money out of pocket in buying wigs, which only conceal but do not prevent the trauma of hair loss. So the market really is huge, but the solutions that exist today are weak. Preventative solutions on the market, they're based on scalp cooling, and these are super painful. They do not work reliably across patients from different ethnicities, and they are super time consuming both for the patient and the hospital because they're not portable. So we really want to do better than this, and the first thing we're doing to change the paradigm is addressing the cancer patient needs first. So we're operating sales through digital marketing and oncologist referrals. We're delivering the devices direct to patients who can then operate our device independently in the clinic. And just a quick note to mention that on reimbursement, not only are wigs already reimbursed by the majority of insurers, but the preventative solutions in the US received their first Class 3 CPT code just this last summer. And who's going to deliver on this amazing opportunity? Well, it's a team led by me and Aaron Hannon in the CTO and CEO roles, a team that has built medical devices, ran clinical trials for cancer patients, and sold direct-to-consumer devices before. And the team who's also joined as an advisor by the former CEO of our leading competitor in the market. So let me just wrap up by telling you that we're moving from our preclinical data gathering onto the first-in-human clinical trial with 30 patients that will be starting in Q3 2022. And beyond that, we'll move to raising a Series A and obtaining 510K clearance to market our device in the US, where there are significant exit opportunities both at this stage and beyond. To date, we've been really fortunate to be funded by many sources, including Y Combinator and even EIT Health, who named us the winners of Crash Barcelona 2019 Accelerator. So we're a European team with an ambition to make a transformative global impact in the patient experience of cancer treatment. We hope that you will join us in that mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Barbara. That was a really great pitch. Let's move over to the jury. Let's invite them in and listen to their questions, please. Who would like to begin? Danielle, did I see a hand? No, Aidan. Aidan, over to you and Danielle. Okay.
Sounds like a very interesting product. One of my questions is how it actually works to stop blood flow. I mean, is this a whole, does it cover your whole head and presses on the skin? And how can you reliably do that? And the other question was, on one of your slides, you had neuropathy mentioned, so I don't understand that.
Sure, yeah. So we've developed a technique that applies light compression via pneumatic bladders that cover the entire scalp. So you're correct. So those bladders are placed all along the scalp so that we can reduce blood flow at all points around the scalp. And by reducing blood flow, we're reducing the amount of chemo that gets to the hair follicles that ends up preventing the destructive chemo action on the follicles, which helps patients retain their hair. And then on your second question, so our localized microvascular compression therapy method is a method of reducing blood flow and chemo delivery two extremities. So we can use it to target other chemotherapy side effects, and that's where neuropathy comes in. And even another side effect that we're looking into is infertility. So just to clarify that the neuropathy is the side effect that affects the superficial nerve endings on the peripheries of patients.
Thank you very much. Simon, did you have a question?
Yeah, just kind of going to that, how long is the device used then? So we have a chemotherapy session, it's X hours for the infusion.
Sure, yeah. So the device is worn during the infusion and then for 90 minutes after the infusion. And those 90 minutes after are really to cover the half-life of the chemotherapy after the patient has finished infusion. And that's where one of our really strong points in our value prop comes in, because our device is portable and it allows patients to wear their device when they've left the clinic after their chemo infusion, while the current solutions require that patients stay attached and tethered to these scalp cooling units, thus providing huge congestion in the hospital. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Nana, please ask your question.
I also am excited about your product. Is it any contraindications are known to use your device?
Right. So yeah, so we are targeting patients with solid tumors only, because our predicates have received FDA clearance for solid tumors only, so we do not go for hematological diseases. So that's our remit of application as well.
Thank you. We have time. Who would like to ask it? Simon, back to you. And Claudia.
I would love to know then about the other clinical applications you were mentioning. I mean, neuropathy, you're going to be putting it on the arm, I guess, a similar product, or?
So nerve endings, for example, on the hand and on the feet. So with for your fingers and toes. So with glove-like devices and sock-like devices that apply that light compression at those superficial nerve endings. And actually, I did mention that we've patented our therapy precisely to include those further indications as well. So for example, by a means of a glove-type device, we can apply the compression and prevent chemo from destroying the superficial nerve endings. And it's actually quite an important treatment to make available, or therapy to make available, because often when there is superficial nerve damage, it's irreversible. So something that we're really interested in going after.
Claudio?
Yeah, I was wondering, because chemotherapy, I think at some point will go down, no? Because it will be more specific treatment. So I was wondering if there are applications beyond chemotherapy. You have thought about this, because maybe the market at some point will a little bit disappear, no? Slowly.
Right, so really interesting question, and something we've done a lot of customer validation around. So first of all, chemotherapy usage has actually been predicted to increase in the next 20 to 40 years. So it's here to stay for the foreseeable future. But then moving beyond that, our therapy really allows us to prevent and modulate drug delivery to specific areas of the body. So that's something that will allow us an expansion potential as well.
Thank you so much. We have to wrap up the questions now from our jury. Thank you so very much indeed, Barbara and the jury. Let's now turn to Italy. And in Italy, we are going to meet the CEO and co-founder of a startup. The name is Ricornia, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Emiliano Lepore. So Emiliano, good afternoon. Great to see you, and you have 5 minutes now to pitch.
Thank you. Sight is the most important sense for human beings. Today, I would like to talk to you about keratoconus, a progressive eye disease. This is how these patients see the world right now. We have 218 million eyes worldwide affected by this disease, with a prevalence much higher in Asian and Middle East countries compared to Europe and US. And we have, being a progressive eye disease, we have 1.8 million new eyes to be treated every year. in particular in the stage 2 to 4, which is our target group of patients. The corneas in keratoconus patients are deformed due to a double mechanism of weakening of the collagen fibers and thinning of the cornea itself, which is leading to protrusion of the central part of the eye and to a very poor quality of vision. What is currently available for these patients is a combination of two surgical techniques, the cross-linking and the intracorneal segments. The first is effective in limiting the progression of the disease, but has no effects at all in terms of improving vision. On the other side, the intracorneal segments were initially developed for patients with myopia and adapted just as a secondary use for patients with keratoconus. And this results in being non-effective in at least 50% of the keratoconus cases, due to the unpredictability of the visual outcomes. At Reconia, we want keratoconus patients to recover vision and to see the world nicely again. We have developed the first ever nitrile corneal implant to treat keratoconus efficiently with predictable visual outcomes, the Grosso implant, where the uniqueness is in the curvature, similar to the physiological curvature of the eye, for a complete, precise, and predictable remodeling of the entire cornea, as opposed to what is currently happening with intracorneal segments, which are implanted peripherally in the eye, trying to remodel the center where actually the problem is located. But the unpredictability is really the key pain point of surgeons. We have developed a minimally invasive device combined with a minimally invasive surgery through a 3.5mm incision only. The device is fully developed with contract manufacturer certified EIT 10485. The patent is granted in Italy and extended in the geographies listed in the slide. We are going to target the most severe cases of keratoconus, stage 3 and 4, where there is a lack of current solutions and are already counting for 47% of the total market, reaching then patients also stage 2, counting for 80% of the total addressable market, which is 1.1 billion euros on an annual basis based on incidence, and we are targeting 80% market share by year 5. On the upstream, we have leading manufacturers certified EIT 10485, covering the entire value chain. On the downstream, we have LOI signed with ophthalmic companies and distributors of ophthalmic products for a final selling price 600 to 1,000 euros per device. Being a medtech company, this is our roadmap. We are currently in the preclinical phase, and the milestones in the next 18 months are to end the preclinical and the first pilot clinical trial in the 2 centers within the Fast Track to Innovation grant, currently ongoing, that we got from the European Commission for 1.6 million euro. On the top of the grant, we are currently fundraising for 1.2 million euros to reach the end of the pilot clinical trial, and then to start a pivotal clinical trial to reach the CE mark towards the end of 2024. I'm Emiliano, co-founder and CEO of Reconia, more than 10 years of experience in innovation in medtech and biotech, with business experience in Europe, Japan, and Singapore. Reconia is my 3rd startup. The first 2 ones we exited through a pure IP business model. Moses, the CSO and co-founder of Reconia, has more than 10 years of experience in running clinical trials for both biopharmaceuticals and medical devices, with experience in Uganda, UK, and Singapore. Arcadio and Thomas are complementing the team on the regulatory and manufacturing. We have already raised 2 pre-seed rounds from Entrepreneur First from Singapore and G-Factor from Italy. Please come and join us in our journey in preventing corneal blindness through innovation. Thank you, and we are open for your questions.
Thank you very much indeed. That's great, Emiliano. Well done. Let's move over now to meet the jury and to have their questions. Who would like to kick off? I've got, I think, Aidan.
Very nice looking device. I have a couple of questions. One is, does it interfere with the light entering the eye? And the second one is, it's made of nitinol. Is there a chance of fibrosis occurring and therefore clouding over the cornea?
So what we have, shown, I mean, in the presentation is not the latest design of the device, just for confidential reasons. We have done a number of improvements, I mean, in the design in order to reduce the amount of material and move basically the main structure of the net towards the outer ring. We have an inner ring that is leaving the optical area completely free, so we have no interaction, in the central, in the optical area of the eye. Nitinol itself is, as you know, very well known to be biocompatible and safe. In the last 30 years, used in cardiovascular application. In the last 10 years, also in ophthalmology. Of course, the risk of fibrosis is something that we are going to evaluate very carefully, during the pilot and then during the pivotal clinical trial. That was one of the inputs we kept, in our mind during the design, reducing as much as we could, all the acute angles that are usually, one of the sources, one of the reasons of
Have you done
fibrosis.
animal trials yet? Animal trials?
We have done wet labs, so both on explanted pig eyes and human corneas, not suitable for corneal transplants. We are approaching in the next quarter the biocompatibility, so the tests in live, on animals.
Who would like to ask the next question, please? Yes, okay, very good. Neil. Neil?
You mentioned that curvature was an important part of the innovation. Is this a one-size-fits-all device, or is there some personalization?
Thank you for the question. So we are going to have one size, for the pilot clinical trials, and we are envisioning from 10 to 12 different sizes that will fit most of the eyes that we are targeting, specifically stage 3 and 4. Just to mention that in principle, the manufacturing process that we are using could also be suitable for a potential customization, but I want to make clear that we are considering, standard sizes for now.
Yes, anybody else who would like to ask a question? Yes, please, Claudio.
So I was looking to the team, but I was not sure if I checked that there was someone related, like a practice, medical doctor, surgeon, and which is your source of experience for this?
Yeah, so let me add some information on that. So we have an advisory board on the clinical side. We have Professor Gell and Professor Malekazeh. They are key opinion leaders in the field of anterior segments, surgery of the anterior segment, in particular cornea and in particular keratoconus. They are on board with us. They are also the lead investigators in the first in human. And the two institutions, the IMO, the Institute of Ocular Microsurgery in Barcelona, where Professor Gell is working, and the Hospital of Toulouse are partners with us in the Fast Track to Innovation grant. So they are, lead experts in the field. Edoardo Grosso, the co-inventor of the Grosso implant, is also on board in Zirconia as co-founder and advisor. So, and we are building a network of key opinion leaders in the field through Professor Gell and Professor Malekazeh. So we are definitely expanding that network of clinicians.
We have time for one more question. Well, would anybody like to just... Okay, Aidan.
There are implants for presbyopia. Is that a similar area?
Well, is not a similar area, but you mentioned a very important keyword, in the sense that we are already exploring also the field of presbyopia, adapting the core technology behind the Grosso implant to be potentially tuned and adapted also to treat patients with presbyopia. That's definitely a potential new area of expansion for Recordner.
Well, very good. That concludes our Q&A time. Thank you, jury, and thank you also, Emiliano. Our afternoon is advancing and that award ceremony is getting closer. So who have we just listened to? In the first part of the afternoon, we were in Spain. We met Luco. Luco is developing the world's first device that can monitor white blood cells non-invasively. After that, in Finland, we discovered LS Cancer Diag, who offers a novel diagnostic test to detect Lynch syndrome, the world's most common inherited cancer syndrome. Afterwards, we moved to Ireland to Luminate Medical. The company's first product uses its novel technology to provide a portable, comfortable, and patient-focused treatment to prevent chemo-induced hair loss. And we have just met in Italy Ricornia, a Medtech ophthalmic company at the preclinical stage, developing implants for treating eye diseases. Now, if you would like to know any more about any of these startups this afternoon, and indeed all the other startups that have been pitching, or if you want to meet people to look for a partner to start a strong collaboration, please go to our networking platform. It's there waiting for you. In the meantime, we are going to take a short break. We will be meeting at 2:30 Central European time, and coming up after the break, we will be listening to our last set of pitches. Don't miss those, they'll be outstanding as well. And then we'll have our third expert insight. That, of course, will be followed by the magic moment of the award ceremony. So, in the meantime, have a moment to relax, good meetings, and see you at 2:30.